So refreshing.
Is it live right now?
I think so.
All right, excellent. Welcome, everybody. Reporting to you live with my dear friends and co-workers to answer your questions about sustainable landscaping and the like. We're still setting up for StreamYard and Instagram and so weiter.
Oh, look at that.
Is it up?
Instagram decided to cooperate.
Oh, my, that's actually very surprising.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it. So yeah, we're live on TikTok, Instagram, and on YouTube.
But we live in the future.
We sure do live in the future. So folks, if you have any questions, make sure to put question in brackets. We're going to start off with some simple ones, though, that we've already had asked of us from some folks that have been inquiring about YardFarmer services. Why should people be thinking about getting their garden ready? It's February. We're all sleepy. We're all half hibernating. It's cold outside. Is it too early?
Is an okay answer hope.
Hope.
And a little bit of joy.
Optimism.
And a little bit of just feeling excited about the future when everything is dark and sad. That's my number one reason for thinking about a garden right now. But yeah, I think it's a really good time right before stuff starts waking up to get in there, start cleaning everything up, and then starting to amend the soil sustainably. Adding compost, adding mycorrhizal fungi, adding biochar. Like there's all sorts of stuff you could do now so that as things start to warm up, things just get moving and grooving a lot faster.
Gotcha.
Yeah. February's a great time. It's when I literally the entire month of January for me is I'm just trying to exist and survive. And then February 1st happens and I go, there's a future in front of me.
Yeah. So it's not, so you have microbial activity in the ground, or is that something you need to wake up?
It's sleeping.
Yeah.
It's sleeping. Mycorrhizal fungi specifically likes to attach itself to a living plant root. So the best way to have it sleep is to have it attached to a perennial plant that isn't, an annual that you would rip out of the soil in the fall. But even then it's going to slowly need to wake up because microbial activity just slows down to a standstill all winter long. Gotcha. Nature's sleeping. That's why we hibernate all January.
So I've heard through the grapevine, mostly from this hippie named Stan who lived up on a mountain by us in Oregon.
Standard.
Yeah, one of the best things to do is to throw some old tree stumps in your garden bed because they'll break down and make some really nice activity there. So I just wanted to run that past you and maybe duck because I see you're making that face.
Stan told you that?
Yeah, it's hippie Stan. I mean, it's the old earth magic.
Stan
right?
said throw some, not, do you say trunks?
Yeah, like tree stumps.
Like stumps, like whole, like this big?
Yeah. Cut them up if you need to.
Cutting them up would be good. Chipping them would be better.
Okay.
I understand the idea of wanting to, especially if you're paying for garden soil, not wanting to just fill an entire raised bed with garden soil. Because we've joked before that the term dirt cheap.
Not so cheap.
Dirt is not that cheap if you're trying to fill a garden bed. But putting an entire tree stump or a log, even a branch, I would say anything but a wood chip, the amount of time that it would take to break down is going to cause a lot of problems with the nutritional makeup of your soil.
Okay.
So I actually see this advice go around social all the time in the, right about now in the spring, all the garden accounts come out of the woodwork and say, you can save money by throwing a bunch of logs in your garden beds. And they film cute little time lapses of them doing it. And all I want is to be like, show us your yellow leaves a couple of months later.
Right.
Because what happens, so imagine this tree log, right? I don't know why I need to visualize the size of it, but carbon, right? You have your nitrogen-based materials like your greens, food scraps, anything that's like wet, I guess. Like that's the green. And then anything dry and crunchy is your carbon. That's the brown. You're throwing this huge amount of carbon into your bed. One, you need an equal amount of carbon and nitrogen, green and brown, or sticky and crunchy, however you want to think about it, for something to actively compost. So not only are you way throwing off the balance, but the way that soil breaks down is that these little bacteria guys come and they see the carbon. They're like, oh, we should start breaking that down. And they attach themselves to it. And they have to use nitrogen in order to break down the carbon. And what you actually see is this it's actually shocking when they show it in line graph form, this incredibly large dip in the available nitrogen in your soil, which is one of the primary macronutrients for growing vegetables. And so you get yellowing leaves, you get lower yields. And if you put a stump or a branch 5 years, 10 years, it's not just breaking down in one season, especially in Utah. I mean, maybe if you're in Appalachia, like super humid North Carolina, or the Pacific Northwest or something, you might get faster breakdown. But even still, I think we're at a couple of growing seasons where you'd have a huge depletion in nitrogen. So I just think it's silly. It's like easy advice that people do without thinking of the consequences, the science, if you will.
Run it through a chipper and it's game on.
Yeah, I would do some wood chips. I wouldn't fill 3/4 of my bed with wood chips and top with some mulch or compost or something. I said mulch. Mulch and wood chips are the same.
Right.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would say 1/3, the bottom third with chipped wood chips. I might even be a little bit extra and inoculate them with a mycorrhizal fungi mix or something. So that would really jumpstart everything.
Digestion and breakdown.
Inoculation is literally like we get it really wet and then like think chicken and breadcrumbs. Like we just want a coating of these inoculants that you can purchase that are full of these beneficial fungi and bacteria. Chicken and breadcrumbs, the mulch, and then add garden bed soil. You could make your own potting soil, some compost. But yeah, I would never put a log in a vegetable bed.
Just too big of a meal for those little guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So folks joining us right now, if you are on YouTube, the good news is that this recording will live forever on YouTube. If you are on TikTok or Instagram, they tend to delete these videos as soon as they're done. So
I think you can post Instagrams. TikTok, not so much. Yeah. Instagram will save to my page, my timeline.
So to be on the safe side, if you came in late and you have any questions, or if you want to watch the whole video, YouTube, it's YardFarmer on YouTube. It's definitely your place to be. Rebecca May from Instagram wants to know, what about biochar? One of our favorite topics.
What about biochar?
Yeah.
I got so many books. Where's my biochar book? It's probably behind there. Do we see the thing that says burn?
No.
It's behind my cute little sign.
Yeah.
Biochar is my favorite thing in the world. It is what would I even call it? A tool. It is a thing you can apply like a top dressing or mix into your soil like you would a fertilizer, but it actually doesn't have any, at least on its own, any nutrients in and of itself. What it is you get any sort of carbon-based material. Most often, this is something like fallen trees, fallen logs, branches, leaves. I think it's usually wood. And it goes through something called a pyrolyzer. I saw one once. It's basically, it was a huge shipping container with the most giant oven in it. And I was at this place, Go Biochar in Salt Lake. And I had to text my husband to be like, I am walking into a shipping container right now. Just call me in 10 minutes. But regardless, the pyrolyzer, I'm going to say that again. This pyrolyzer heats the carbon-based material up to such a degree that it actually fixes the carbon and it takes on the properties of like charcoal. It has that same sort of oily, it gets the black soot on you when you touch it. Once that carbon is fixed, it no longer breaks down. So normally, you have a tree. Trees are amazing because they're sequestering carbon from the atmosphere. Eventually that tree will die, that tree will fall. And it's still a net positive. It is still sequestered more carbon than it will eventually release back into the atmosphere, but it's still going to release carbon as it breaks down and turns into soil. Biochar fixes it and it will never break down. So it actually is preventing CO2 emissions from entering the atmosphere, which is so cool. So kind of a carbon negative product in that way. You're preventing future emissions of CO2 by making biochar. The reason we like it in gardens is that it's incredibly absorbent. It's like a sponge. And it also provides soil structure that could take years and years of really, really intensive, regenerative, careful practices to build a natural soil food web and soil sponge that would have that same structure. So it sort of just creates that, loose, nutritious, high-rise condo for all of the amazing microbes to live in. You can purchase biochar that is mixed with other things. There's a biochar compost azomite blend that's phenomenal. So you don't have to just get it on its own. but I think it's a really worthy investment. Even if you just bought a small bag of it and added it to each of your garden beds, I think you'd notice an improvement in the same season.
And if you're in Utah, you can just
call John from Go Biochar.
Yep. And we do have a video on YouTube and way back in your TikTok feed.
Way back.
If you want to see that pyrolyzer, it is pretty cool in action.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Solar Punk guy on TikTok.
Hey, Solar Punk guy.
I love Solar Punk.
I love Solar Punk too.
It's deep in my heart there.
I'm ready for you to be fully on the mend so we can have our Sustainability Meets Pop Culture podcast.
Yes.
And we can talk about Solar Punk.
Solar Punk's amazing. He's thinking about a career change. Would like to know how you got established and how you find clients. Now you have an advantage over a lot of folks because your background's in marketing.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, I hate to give you just that answer, which is have 10 years of digital marketing experience, but I have a better answer for you that's less depressing. Right. I actually put up a link on my Instagram stories. I will need to probably go get it and immortalize it in my feed. You know what? I will put it in my link in bio for TikTok, since you're watching from TikTok. I put together a form for people who are hopeful sustainable designers, hopeful future permaculture designers, to give me their information, because I get emails all the time. I'd say every couple of days, right, Rachel? Yeah. We get emails. Rachel says yes. We get emails every couple of days from folks saying, hey, I have this amazing project, but it's a nonprofit community garden and we have no funding in order to give you design fees. And I would love to take on every single pro bono client that shows up in my inbox, but we don't have time because we're a team of 5 and we got to pay our bills.
Right.
So I put up a link where the hopeful clients doing nonprofits or having really great causes but limited funding, and the people who want to become future designers, maybe they're in a permaculture design course or a landscaping course, can connect, and then you can get portfolio work for, you're helping a good cause, they're getting the work they need, you're getting portfolio work, sort of the symbiotic relationship. So you can get started that way. But that was very long and rambling. What I would say education-wise is permaculture design certification, any landscaping courses that you can recommend. Is everything good? Do we need to wake up the phone?
No,
okay. Any landscaping courses, permaculture design course. I blanked a little bit there, but that's what I would say.
And I've been so impressed over the last year since we actually became this organization. You have never stopped taking on knowledge. I know it's like you and Kyra, our landscape architect, are going off learning about rainwater harvesting, and you're taking all these courses. It seems like every couple of months you're off
at least once
more.
a year. I want us to do a full professional development course. The rainwater harvesting one was mind-blowing.
It just blew your mind.
Yeah.
And one of the things I also really appreciate about your approach to sustainable landscaping and sustainable design is never once you said, back off, this is a limited field. There's a ton of room for people to work in this field.
No.
Yeah.
Gatekeeping is just really the antithesis to our values. And you know that.
Yeah.
Because we're raging socialists over here.
Yeah.
You heard it here first on live. We don't shy away from that word.
Yeah.
So I don't want to gatekeep secrets. And the fact of the matter is there is no shortage of work. There's no shortage of work. I really think we could have 100 more of us, 100 more studios like us, and it wouldn't affect our bottom line at all.
No.
Because the demand is there.
Yep.
And I think that's the exciting part, is like if 100 people learn how to do this and then they all have 100 clients, suddenly the collective impact and the water conservation from all of these clients who are getting these sustainable landscapes put in,
it's
suddenly
amazing.
There's a needle moving, right?
Yeah, it's amazing the reaction people have when they realize that just rocking in or bricking in their yard isn't sustainable landscaping.
Yeah, please don't rock your yard.
Yeah.
Don't rock your yard.
You just made a
It's gonna be so hot.
Earth to Rebecca on TikTok sends love because going live is hard.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
I got support, y'all. I don't know if y'all know this, but it is not just me. Rachel here she's right behind the camera. She's the best thing that has ever happened to us and is keeping me so much more on track because I have an ADHD brain. So we got Rachel supporting me on this side. We got Lee, who I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, Lee.
It's all good.
Because I don't want to get emotional on live. We didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
I didn't ask your permission, but Lee has been out for a long time, recovering from a very serious health thing. And I'm just so freaking glad that you are sitting here in front of me, my dude.
So happy to be here.
I'm so freaking happy about it.
Yeah.
If you all don't know Lee, this is Lee Cade of Geek Show fame.
Yeah.
Podcaster, radio host extraordinaire. And yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot more of him as he heals and feels better.
And we've got Kyra, we've got Steve. Yeah, it's a small little group. But
5 people. I mean,
we are
to
mighty.
go from a team of 1 waitressing tables trying to quit and get this off the ground to a team of 5 in less than a year.
No, that's nice. Okay, somebody's in Utah wants to get started composting. They need to do different things differently because of
Great question.
Climate, elevation, all that stuff.
Great question. Yeah, it's actually much harder to compost in Utah. It's much harder to do a lot of things in Utah than grow a lot of things than in other places. There are places in Oregon, North Carolina, I said those already, East Coast, Midwest, where you couldn't make a pile of any natural materials and have it not compost.
Right.
I actually had a consult once, I think it was North Carolina, ironically, where she was so frustrated because she was trying to make garden compost, but no matter how much she put in the pile, it just became earth. Like it wasn't even a pile of dirt. It was just level with the ground because it was composting so quickly. In Utah, you do not have that problem.
We were in North Carolina last year, and the client we're working with was composting wool rugs.
That was that would not work. That would live 20 years in Utah or something.
They were decomposing in a year.
Yeah, if anybody is tuning in from Utah, that's where we are based. We do designs all over, but Utah is probably 60-70% of our clientele because location tagging on social media is like weirdly accurate. Regardless, if you are watching this from Utah, it is harder to grow things because of our extreme swings in temperature and our really drought-prone summers. It is harder to compost because we have extremely low humidity here. I don't know if you know that it's dry, but you probably have noticed. Extremely low humidity, and our soil is really alkaline, which inhibits microbial activity in the soil. So where you are in places like, I'll say it again, Oregon or North Carolina, I'm just picturing the ferns. I'm picturing those like lush forests, right? Like that soil is so acidic comparatively. It's like below 6 on the alkalinity scale. We are always above 7. I once put a pH tester in my soil and it was like 8.2 or something.
Wow.
I'm like, no wonder I couldn't grow what I wanted to grow. So things just kind of slow to a halt. You have to be much more, if you want to compost in Utah, you have to be much more on top of maintaining the moisture levels. So coming up with a system to keep wetting your compost pile down. I would love it if you could do sort of a rainwater to compost management system, but you could also just hook up your hose. You're also really going to want to be on top of the greens to browns ratio. I went on and on about greens and browns earlier, but you can't really just throw things into the tumbler, throw things into a pile and hope for the best. It really needs to be, I'll explain it in 2 different ways. It needs to be either 1-to-1 carbon ratio, 1-to-1 carbon to nitrogen words. You need to do a 1-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio, but it's not like volume, it's weight. So if you imagine like how heavy a banana peel is and how heavy like a handful of leaves are.
Right.
So we really, sometimes if you have a ton of really, really heavy greens, we're talking, it's going to feel like you're applying 6 times as many browns.
Right.
And that really is the 1-to-1 ratio. General rule of thumb, if you don't want to do too much mental math with the weight, is to at least do 2 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, but you might even still need a little more, to be honest. So you got to stay on top of that. You got to stay on top of keeping it nice and damp in there.
Just a reminder for folks tuning in, if you are on TikTok or Instagram, we don't know literally how long this feed will stay up. I think TikTok goes away pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So this recording will live forever on YouTube. It's just YardFarmer at YouTube. And we'll also be breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. So if you have something that you're looking for, we'll actually have individual videos for that. And next week, I believe we have our first ever webinar about getting started with gardening. So
yeah,
do you want to talk about that for a second?
That question about the composting in Utah is actually really relevant. Yes, so I just posted a link to a webinar that we are doing that is specifically on sustainable gardening practices. So not just like garden tips and tricks, here's how to garden, but specifically how to align your vegetable gardening or edible landscaping, food forestry, really anything food related that you want to do in your yard, aligning that more with natural ecological practices rather than conventional agricultural practices. Because a lot of the gardening advice I see, which is like, test your soil, apply this much percentage nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and till your soil every single year and blah, 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 blah. None of that is actually in line with what nature wants to do. It's in line with what we've kind of adapted in our post-industrial or industrial age in 19th, 20th, and now 21st century America and beyond. So we could do better. We can keep our soil structures building over time without disturbing them. We can use water more effectively and efficiently. We can grow in more layered and biodiverse planting communities so that we're not having to constantly be treating for pests. We can plant things that will attract the right managers of those pests so that you can actually make your garden an ecosystem that sort of manages itself. Basically, all of this to say, we're trying to simulate nature so that nature does the work for you so that you do less work and you get more cool stuff.
You spend more time enjoying your landscape.
Yeah, because I have realized I overcommitted to gardening a couple of years ago. I think the pandemic did help people make gardening their personality a little bit. And that happened to me for sure. But I want to garden as a hobby, not as a chore. And so I want the task that I do in the garden to be a thing where I get to just have my little moment. I get to wear an apron and carry a basket and have my little moment in the garden. I don't want to be constantly forced to go out there in order to stay on top of weeding and pests and watering, which we can have those things manage themselves if we're setting things up in line with nature rather than just like your basic agricultural gardening.
And if you're interested in signing up for the webinar, you do need to sign up for it.
You do, yes.
We have a link on the page here on Instagram and YouTube. And if you, it's really hard to click a link on a screen, especially since it's not embedded anything. It is in the description of the video as well. So you can sign up for that.
Nice.
And we're going live next week. Really excited. We've been trying to do a webinar for almost a year now. Yeah. So getting this off the ground is pretty exciting.
I did put the link on my website as well. It's just yardfarmer.co. So if you're watching this and you want to go grab the link, that's probably the easiest place to find it. Yardfarmer.co.
And
or the description in the YouTube video.
Yep. And there's a Q&A session at the end of it. So if you end up having questions while the webinar is going, we invite you to ask questions. And we do have more questions. I'm going to make sure I get this right. Gimbrinus 1110 on YouTube wants to know if you have any recommendations for areas with poor drainage and standing water in residential landscaping.
Oh, that is such a great hyper niche question that I absolutely have answers for. Although I'm going to have to give you a couple of different hypotheticals because I don't know your specific situation. You should do a perk test first so that we actually understand what the drainage rate of your soil is. So if you have poor drainage and standing water, there are two major things that are probably happening. One, the topography of your soil might not be allowing it to move off of the property or distribute in a more even layer that could evapotranspire. So we might need to do a little bit of earthworks to direct that water somewhere more productive. But it's also highly likely that you just have a much higher clay content in your soil and that your soil is just not draining very fast. So I would do a perk test. And how you do that is you dig a hole that's about the size of a Home Depot bucket and you fill that hole up with water and then ignore it for a while because you want it to just completely infiltrate. We want the soil to be fully saturated. So we just kind of fill it up and let it slowly drain. We don't need to measure it yet. And then you want to time how quickly it drains in 1 hour. And you do not need to be high tech with this. I would just find a stick or something, shove it in the hole, and then you like Sharpie the top of the water line, set a 1 hour timer, then measure how far it's decreased in 1 hour. That's going to give you a percolation rate or a drainage rate. I would have to go on for longer to explain then what you would do with that rate as far as formulas for earthworks and basin calc. It would get a little bit complicated, but being empowered to understand how quickly your soil drains at all is probably the first step. And then I would say, what we would do, without getting into the math where all of you will just glaze over and leave, we would want to then change your earthworks to be in line with the percolation rate. So swales, basins, channels, things that are moving the water from where it's standing, where you don't want it to stand, to places where it could stand, or not really stand, but like rain gardens, swales, things that the plants can really just hang out there and enjoy that water, uptake that water, especially if it can be spread out in a way where you don't have that bogginess where mosquitoes could spawn or anything. So the reason I would want you to know your perk rate first is that the slower your perk rate, the slower your soil drains, the larger these surface areas need to be. You can't be a cute little trench because it's going to just fill up with water and you're going to have standing water for a week. It might need to be a shallow, very large mulched basin instead to give more surface area for that soil to infiltrate all at the same time. Does that make sense, Lee?
It does. And I love that as soon as you start talking about clay, they chimed in and said they're in Texas with clay soil.
With heavy clay?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the reason it would stand.
But if you were to do a large shallow basin and fill it with the kind of plants that thrive in that, then that's going to take care of the problem pretty quickly.
It would, yes. Yeah. So I don't want to get too, like I said, too specific with the math right now. Send me an email, or even go to my website and book a rainwater consultation, because what I could do is I would actually calculate the square footage of your roof. We would calculate how much water is coming from each downspout, and then we could cross-reference that with the perk rate that you've just collected, and then actually size out the volume of those basins for you as far as length, width, and depth. You would need to, you'd swale out a little channel from where it's standing and then expand it into a basin of a certain size, depending on all of those factors that I just listed.
It's awesome. Yeah, they just said that they're excited about looking at a rain garden and they're going to check the perk rate. And thank you. One of my favorite people of all time, on Shantae in Pocatello, Idaho, says hi.
Yeah?
So, yeah, she's a great human being.
What's the story, Lee?
This is somebody I've known for a very, very long time.
Oh, yay.
She's very dear to the family. Sawdust Fairy. I remember Sawdust Fairy from our old live sessions.
Yes.
On TikTok, wants to know how long the webinar is going to be. We have good news on that front.
The webinar that we're doing,
next week?
90 minutes, but it's going to be 60 minutes of just me giving you all the tips and tricks, and then 30 minutes of Q&A.
Nice. Eliza on TikTok lives on the west side in Salt Lake and has horrendous soil. That's west side Salt Lake.
But tell me what you mean. Is it builder's fill?
They want to know what they can do to amend it. We don't, Eliza, if you want to illuminate us on what kind of soil that is.
Yeah.
I know my mom and dad's house on the west side of the Salt Lake Valley. It was one of the last houses in the neighborhood built. And so the contractors basically took all of the backfill from all the other foundations and just dumped it. So there was
the worst.
There was no topsoil.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
So I can start talking about different scenarios, but if they chime in and say what is wrong with their soil, we could maybe get more specific. Cool. If it is just that it's really either rocky, compacted is big here, like where it's just, there's nothing going on. So it's just like chipping away at stone. We need to get organic matter infiltrated, like integrated into the soil. Depending on how compacted it is, we might need to do a little bit of tilling before we begin our no-till journey. Tilling is not my preference, but if your soil is a rock, then we might need to at least integrate the organic matter and then use that as the baseline, and then we'll start our no-till journey after that. It's not like your soil's good anyway. So,
is it possible that in the fall, when everybody's going out and running around with their rakes and cleaning up all that stuff, they should probably just leave that organic matter on their yard to break down?
It doesn't break down in Utah. That's the problem. A lot of people say, no microbials, Rachel says. No microbials. Lee, you should know. No.
I've been in a coma. I can't.
No, Lee has literally been in a coma. I don't know if y'all know this, but it's been wild, and we're really happy to have him back because we've missed him very much.
It's going to be my excuse for everything.
I
was in a coma.
Freaking goodness, you're no longer in a coma, man.
It would be spooky if I was, and we were doing this right now.
So. That would be way weirder.
Yeah.
And sadder?
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're not in a coma and that you're here. Sorry.
You still have to rake your leaves.
You still have to rake your leaves. You could put them in a big pile. You could put them in, underneath your plants in a garden bed. But if you just left them on your lawn and your sidewalk and everything, they're just not going to break down in one season here because of the alkalinity and the humidity that I mentioned before. Regardless, I think depending on the soil situation that the commenter has, we would need to integrate potentially some nutrients, depending on if there's a glaring nutrient deficiency. We'd need to integrate organic matter. Leaves would be fine. I would like to see some biochar. I'd like to see some trace minerals. In Utah specifically, azomite is like the best thing in the whole world. It's a trace mineral that's actually mined here. And we're seeing crazy studies about the plant's ability to uptake other nutrients when azomite is present in the soil. So if I were to just, I got more up there. Organic matter, and it's like one of its purest, easiest forms to integrate, where it doesn't need to break down, like the leaves don't need the bacteria to eat it up. You can just go and purchase humates or humic acid, which is basically the organic matter already in its broken down form. So if I were to just give you a blanket recommendation, not knowing anything about your soil profile or texture or anything, I'd say head over to IFA, get some organic compost, get some humates, get some azomite, maybe go grab a bag of biochar. Then I would layer that all on top of your compacted soil, maybe with some wood chips. Again, we've been on and on about the wood thing and how it can tie up nitrogen. So if you had a glaring nitrogen deficiency, I might skip the wood chips. That's why we kind of need to know your specific situation. But regardless, spread that out. And then if your soil isn't super compacted, we could maybe just lightly integrate that. If it's super compacted, we're going to do one good till to integrate everything. And then we want to plant something that will stabilize that soil and continue to pump nutrients into it. So I'd probably suggest a cover crop of some kind for a season. And then next season, you get to live all of your gardening fantasies. And maybe this year, if you want to grow something this year, you do a couple raised beds. And then next year, you can live all of your garden dreams.
Nice. Okay, Sawdust Fairy also mentioned microlife, and that could be helpful.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
You heard it here first. Okay. I don't know nothing about it.
We'll look into it. So, Ellie Barnes on TikTok lives on an acre in coastal Mendocino.
Cool.
And wow, I'm feeling so much jealousy right now.
Yeah.
They want to homestead their yard. What can they do this month to get that started?
This month?
Yeah, February.
Again, I just have so many follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Because homesteading could be so many things.
Right.
I'm going to interpret that question that homesteading means we want to start thinking about how to self-sustain a little bit more. But that, like I said, that could mean animals. That could mean amending your soil for growing. I'm going to say, I want you to do an analysis this month on your capacity to collect rainwater off of the structures. So if you are on an acre and there's already a home or a barn, or you're planning to have a home or a barn, I would say, let's figure out what's the total amount of water coming off of those structures every storm, 1 inch of rain, annual rainfall, so that we can plan really intuitively and really strategically to send that water to the trees that you want to plant, to the native perennials and grasses that will attract the wildlife that will become ecosystem managers of your garden, even to if you were homesteading and raising livestock, you could have those rainwater basins that I've mentioned a few times as the place where you're growing the feed, like the grasses and hay and straw that your livestock would eat. And you could get away with not irrigating those things once those plants are established. And that could help close that loop as far as raising the livestock, growing the food for the livestock, not having to pay for water to grow the food to feed the livestock. Right. And then you start thinking about how to close loops. Because I think at its core, homesteading is saying, I don't want to rely as much on external factors. I want to be self-sustaining. And that would closing loops is the first strategic step.
So in their case, February is probably a really good research month.
Yeah. Well, and in where they live, I mean, there might actually be rain. I mean, we've got all sorts of rain happening over there right now. So observing the fall of water, if water's coming out of a downspout, how is it moving across the topography? Are there low points which would be natural places to plant rain garden plants or plant grasses that could then be forageable or palatable to livestock? And really just understanding what's possible and what isn't.
Gotcha.
And then as soon as it is possible, I mean, as soon as you know that thing, you could start putting shovel in the ground and getting those rain gardens. So yeah, if you did the research tomorrow, next week, you could be digging the trenches.
Out there doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and just a reminder for folks who are turning in, especially on Instagram and TikTok, these videos have a finite shelf life on those feeds. So you will want to, especially if you are just joining us, these videos will live forever on our YouTube channel, which is just YardFarmer at YouTube. And we will also be answering any questions for the next half hour to hour if you have them about getting your landscape started or just general gardening questions, landscape questions.
Yeah.
You got it. We're happy to take them.
Yeah.
We've got an actual pretty good count. We don't have a lot of YouTube subscribers, so seeing a dozen folks on there is pretty exciting.
Yeah. And it's our first live in a long time.
Rachel, can you see how many folks are on TikTok with us?
23?
23? Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
And we got 30 on Instagram.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So thank you all. I mean, it's it's Tuesday night. There's all kinds of things going on in the world, and you're hanging out, nerding out about gardening with us, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got some more questions.
Can we?
Yeah, we did.
We got a question.
Justin on TikTok wants to know if leaves are safe mulch on a site where termites are present.
Should be.
Yeah. They're not into leaves, are
I
they?
see no issue with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say so.
Now, I have a question.
Okay.
Do termites serve any good for us as
I've never
gardeners?
investigated that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Out in nature, it's just the problem is that we as humans like to superimpose our grid landscape onto nature and then be like, darn, these insects that used to exist as part of an ecosystem decomposing wood and helping it become soil now suddenly want to eat our 2x4s and
right. we need our composters
and our floorboards and things. That's super common. I think something that's really interesting when you start transforming your landscape from a traditionally landscaped yard into a sustainable one is there's this uncomfortable, 6 months to a year where the ecosystem starts waking up, but the ecosystem isn't managed fully yet. So, you might see, I don't want to say big scary words, but my garden started popping off and getting really good. And then I saw a field mouse and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want mice. And then I had to really take a deep breath and be like, wait, nature, I'm not trying to exist in a bubble where there's just some grass and a couple of flowers and nothing else. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to achieve. And yeah, sure enough, the barn owls showed up. There's a neighborhood cat who I see literally every night cross the street and then go into my yard. And I know what that cat's looking for.
Right.
So the ecosystem really does start to manage itself. And now 3-4 years in, I don't really have any pest problems anymore.
Right.
I got my big scary bugs eating the little annoying bugs, and we don't have any rodent issues because everything's just moving and grooving.
That's awesome.
Super easy.
That's awesome.
Termites, though, I mean, they're just going to eat your house now because we did that. We built a bunch of houses
in termite town
superimposed our grid onto the world.
Bradley, let's fix it. Let's fix it on Instagram. Wants to know your favorite cover crop in Utah.
Ooh, very cool. My favorite cover crop that I honestly don't even use as much as a cover crop, so much as just a ubiquitous ground cover for large areas, is purple prairie clover, because it is native to our region, Rocky Mountain, Intermountain West region. Nitrogen fixing ground cover. It is taller than a micro clover though. So if you were just trying to do this as a residential, suburban or urban yard, this is more like a prairie kind of thing, which most cover crops are that. So just be advised and informed that this is not little micro clovers. But purple prairie clover, if you had a large area that you wanted to just cover, stabilize, get nutrients pumped into, and you lived in the Intermountain West, that would be my first recommendation. Beyond that, if you were cover cropping a raised garden bed, and we're going to talk about this in the sustainable webinar that we're doing next week. Another shout out to sign up for the webinar. Link in the YouTube description, link on my website, yardfarmer.co. Regardless, if you were just doing a cover crop in a residential vegetable bed kind of setting, just to have your soil stabilized and keep those mycorrhizal fungi alive all winter, I would start in early September. I would start fava beans.
Okay.
Are hardy in Utah, except down to really extreme temperatures, and you can get away with just doing a cold frame or a low tunnel, where you basically just do little arches and then throw a layer of plastic over it to keep it warm. And even so, if it was this winter, which we've had a really mild winter, the fava beans would be completely fine. And what's cool about that is that they're edible. Like you can be just enjoying those all as soon as they're ready to pick. So you get that yield, and then you also get that sin fixation in the soil as well.
Gotcha. Braden Murphy on YouTube. This may be an odd question. How do you feel about using a scythe to mow a lawn? Are there any concerns about possibly cutting a lawn too low if you have to a low mow lawn?
Yeah, Rachel says, I have to say that would be my only inhibition with using a scythe is I don't trust myself with a scythe.
Yeah.
However, I have seen some folks who have very soothing videos on social using a scythe to cut down their fields, their cover crops. I'm all for a fossil fuel free mowing option, especially if you have a yard in a manageable size to do it.
Full body workout.
If you are, if you are insured medically, I think I would be totally fine with you using a scythe. I would be excited to watch the videos of you using a scythe.
Yeah.
The question, however, that I heard that I was really excited to answer with that is there danger with mowing a lawn too low? And the answer is yes, because guess what? Root length, root health directly correlate blade length. So in Utah specifically, I don't know if you've noticed this, people keep their lawns mowed really short in Utah. And I do feel like this silly and controversial. I do think there's something, thinking about a certain religious denomination's preferred haircut length. Like there's a certain morality associated with the tidiness and the short
uniformity,
the kemptness of something. But if you are mowing a lawn down to an inch tall, we literally watch the roots of that lawn shrink. And imagine the roots are shorter. How are they accessing water? Right. Now the soil up higher is much drier. Suddenly the lawn is significantly less drought tolerant. Now we have to pour more water on the lawn. So one of the best things you can do just to make your existing lawn, even a Kentucky bluegrass lawn, more drought tolerant is just raise the setting on your mower a couple of settings and just let it be a little bit taller. It's why I'm such a huge fan of no mow or low mow lawn mixes that actually do grow a bit taller, but they flop over. So fine fescue or any fescue blend, like a Chewings red fescue, a creeping fescue. This is a really thinly bladed grass that looks really magical to me. It gives Hobbit to me, gives New Zealand, gives rolling hills. That grows 8 to 10 inches tall. So now you have that corresponding root length, depth, root health associated with that 8 to 10 inches tall, but it doesn't stand straight up. It flops over. So you get that really beautiful, I don't even know how to describe it, windblown, flippe flappe. You get this sort of beautiful, magical look where you can still walk across it. It's only a couple of inches because this is flopped over. Does that make sense?
It does.
That would be a much healthier, more drought tolerant lawn. I actually think that's why fine fescue blends are about 40% more drought tolerant than a Kentucky bluegrass, is just because you can leave it longer. Because it's still a cool season grass, just like Kentucky bluegrass is, but we have that increased root health that I really think is contributing to the increased drought tolerance of it.
Rachel Steed 87 on Instagram. I'm sorry, Rachel, I just found a way I can actually look at this stuff.
I can stop typing them on?
Yeah.
I was literally just typing Rachel Steed's comment.
Actually, I lost her comment. What was
Okay,
her
it's right
comment?
here. Can I overseed my Kentucky bluegrass with clover, yarrow, etc., or do I have to remove the grass first?
That is such a great question. It just depends on how much you want to keep mowing, basically. I love overseeding because I am lazy and I don't want to have to do manual labor if I can help it. So you can absolutely overseed. I would do it multiple times. I would do it in spring, in fall, in spring again, in fall again, and let the clover yarrow blend, which is a fabulous blend to overseed bluegrass with. So that's a great choice. But I would definitely overseed it because you're still going to have that bluegrass that you're going to have to keep mowing and keep maintaining, or it's just going to get really out of hand. There's also, with overseeding, that awkward period where you need to establish your new clover, the new clover seeds or yarrow seeds that you're adding, which means you need to add more water, which means that the Kentucky bluegrass is now getting more water, which means the Kentucky bluegrass is now growing faster. So there's this kind of awkward stage you have to keep pushing through and just keep overseeding to really get a noticeable grass to clover to yarrow ratio. I personally, I will say, one of my favorite combos of lawn is grass, clover, yarrow, because clover and grass work really symbiotically together. And I find it to be a much more resilient turf-like material than just clover on its own. Yarrow really helps with the foot traffic tolerance. It's a very hardy plant. It does also require regular mowing. I'd probably mow it every 2 to 3 weeks, whereas a Kentucky bluegrass lawn, you are mowing once a week usually, but it's not a completely maintenance-free product.
Gotcha. Dana Clark on Instagram wants to know the best way to deal with blackberry and horsetail overgrowth in order to prep for a garden area.
You got to get some goats or you got to burn it down.
Yeah.
But if asterisk liability, if you're going to do a controlled burn, there are services that you should have a licensed professional on site. When you say for a garden area, that makes me feel like it's relatively small, in which case we're probably not doing a controlled burn. A controlled burn is when you've got acres of invasives that you're trying to manage, in which case you would look up your state's policies on controlled burns. You would make sure that the licensed professionals are at least aware that you're doing it, or I would not do it without them physically present on the site. Different states have different rules about your rights as a homeowner to do that. If you had a smaller area, if we really need to deal with invasives, including blackberry, which I know you were just talking. What did you say it did to a house?
We watched a house by our house in Central Oregon get completely overwhelmed by blackberries and pulled down to the ground within 6 years of the beginning of the infestation.
So the blackberries pulled down a house.
It pulled it down. It grew over the whole thing. Within 4 years, the entire house was covered in, it was an abandoned house.
Yeah.
So within 4 years, the whole thing was covered in blackberries. And by the 6th year, there was just a pile of blackberries on the ground.
What in the sleeping beauty is that?
Yeah,
that's
it's
terrible. So
when you see those things that say, what happens when humanity's gone? What does Earth do? Well, Earth will pull everything down.
Like The Last of Us.
Yeah.
It's literally that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Earth takes it all back eventually.
Takes it all back. Yeah.
Pop culture sustainability podcast, my friend.
It's coming. It's coming.
Goats, man. Goats.
Goats
So
leading.
you literally Google your city and then Google goatscaping. I promise something will come up. I Googled this live during a virtual consultation last week because this client just had so many invasives that we had to deal with. And there was a goatscaping company in their city where it was $100 for 3 days.
3 days.
3 days.
That's $33 a day.
The goats were eaten for the goats eat for free. So you're paying to feed their goats, right? It's a good deal for the goats, a good deal for the goat owner, but just raise it to the ground. They raise it to the ground, there will be nothing left. They're not discriminatory. So like you have to sacrifice the other plants that are in the space. But even if you don't have it fenced, you just get some T-posts, get some temporary fencing from Tractor Supply or whatever, set it up, call the goat man comes, or goat woman. I don't mean to be
goat person.
Wow, goat person. How dare I, honestly? Oh. Anyway, call the goat human.
That means something different.
That means now we're doing some mythological things.
Some Dr. Moreau stuff going on.
Call the person who owns the goats and have them come eat your blackberry brambles.
Paulette Sky Art. Yes, that is Lee George Cave.
Hi, Paulette.
I'm waving. You can't see me.
Lee is back. He's alive.
I
He's
am alive.
here with us.
It is.
He has
specifically
been-
me.
He has been sleeping, having a little extended nap under the supervision of medical professionals.
Yeah. Reba on TikTok wants to know how to transition a large lawn in the Midwest. I imagine you're meaning transition away from a large lawn.
Into what, my friend?
Yeah.
Do you want a garden? Do you want a forest? Do you want a prairie? I love prairies in the Midwest, any of the Great Plains regions. So I'm going to let you answer me and tell me, what phone are they on? Are they over here? They over here?
TikTok.
TikTok? All right. So I'm going to let you answer me and tell me what you want to change your lawn over to. But in the meantime, because you are in the Great Plains region, I think I'm going to talk about prairies. And so what I would do is, if you can manage it, you said it was pretty large. I would manually remove the sod if you could, because what's really awesome is that you can actually create piles of the sod to create natural contours that don't feel as flat, so that when you oversow your new prairie seeds, you get the rise and fall of a landscape.
Neat.
So you can use the sod as the piles to be the high points and low points of your new beautiful prairie. And then I would just use the native grasses to you. They're usually, the big native grasses like big blue stem, little blue stem, blue grama, switchgrass, and some others. And then I would look up your native wildflower seeds to your specific ecoregion. I would mix all of those things together. You probably want 70, 80+% grasses and 10, 20%, maybe a little more wildflowers. The grasses really kind of need to be the backbone of it. And you overseed it. It's very inexpensive, absolutely beautiful, ecologically very important, but a lot more wild looking than a lawn. So if that freaks you out, if you're starting to feel itchy, just thinking about it, maybe think about 1 or 2 areas that could be those native prairies, and then think about what kind of landscape edging or what kind of barrier we could do to give that a nice frame, so that that feels really high end and intentional that you have a prairie there, rather than it looking like you stopped mowing and it's overgrown or something. But some people are really okay with the wild, and I say all power to them. But a little 6-inch tall brick edge and then a prairie growing up on one side looks like $1 million, because that clean line really frames all of the wild,
Nice.
Yeah.
And for folks tuning in, I know I'm sounding a bit like a broken record here, but if you're on Instagram, TikTok, these do have a finite shelf life, these videos.
Lee is saying go to YouTube.
Go to YouTube.
Lee is saying he's finally back at work and he wants the YouTube.
Well,
he wants the YouTube to grow. So go subscribe on YouTube right now.
I was just looking on Instagram at how many people have joined us recently.
Uh-huh.
And so there's almost an entire hour of information that we've already put out there. So
Yeah.
you're not going to find it on this Instagram feed.
It's on the tube,
It is
man.
on the YouTube channel.
It's on the tube.
So
for Lee, everybody.
do it for
Lee.
Do it for me.
Go subscribe to
Do it for
YouTube
me.
right now for Lee.
I missed a question here on Instagram. I'm going to see if I can find it.
Can I ask you real quick?
Of course.
Bite Rabbit on
Bite Rabbit.
TikTok wants to know, and I know the answer to this as your operations manager, but do you consult for larger projects?
I sure do. How large we talking, my friend?
So
we've,
large.
We've done so large. We've done 10 acres is the most that we've done, I think. Have we done more? Have we done more than 10 acres?
Well, that one that you've got coming up is really big. The Airbnb.
Yeah.
How big is that?
Yeah. Like many acres.
Yeah.
So we do large projects. It's a different approach. Typically, it will be a number of things. One, it could be large in both size and scale, in which, yes, you have lots of acreage, and we're also doing a very hands-on permaculture style design where we're integrating these sustainable systems. So that would look like, let's say you were on 5 or 10 acres, that would look like designing your rainwater harvesting, both active in tanks or cisterns and passive in the ground, designing the solar orientation of your structures for mass energy efficiency, doing livestock rotation, composting strategies, food forestry. It goes on, right? So that's a very large size, scale, scope kind of project. We do that. It does require travel, and we do travel. We went to several projects last year. I am actually trying to walk it back and do fewer, because it just takes a lot out of us as a team to go to a whole new place for many, many days.
Especially if the heat index is 125 degrees.
Yeah, that was, are you talking about Maryland?
Yeah.
that was rough, my friend.
It was an amazing experience, but
The mosquito bites that I had. Anyway, that is large size, scale, scope, all of that. We also do large sized projects, many acres, but maybe a little bit more simplistic on the design side, where we're helping you do a really beautiful residential style landscaped yard directly around the house, that immediate zone 1 area right when you walk out the door. And then we're trying to do native ecosystem restoration on the remaining acres, so that you have your little personal yard part that's a little more maintained. It has more things that you specifically want there. And then the rest, let's say you lived in Idaho, the rest would be a native sagebrush steppe ecosystem, where we're bringing back the big sagebrush, all the native grasses, native wildflowers, aspen trees, cottonwood trees, and not much else, and just kind of letting it self-manage in the beautiful natural way that it was always meant to be.
Sorry, I'm missing the name here on Instagram, but I do have the question. Wants to know what to do to be able to plant under a huge pine tree that has killed everything under it but weeds.
Creeping Oregon grape. Well, I don't know where you are. I don't know if this is native to you, but I would say plant some creeping Oregon grape, and then around it, go get a pine straw mulch. It looks like the Rapunzel fairy tale. It's like woven together, and set that down around the base of the Oregon grape, because then as the pine needles fall, they will just blend in. And you won't have to like worry. You know, people hate pine trees for the pine needles, but if you just use a pine straw mulch, then there's no work involved. Pine straw mulch is kind of woven that way, so it'll just be there like an aesthetic blanket.
Nice.
But creeping Oregon grape is an incredibly hardy, and you could even do regular Oregon grape, which grows much taller, depends on how big the tree is. But creeping Oregon grape is like a foot tall, spreading out, really hardy evergreen shrub with waxy, shiny leaves. And it is naturally adapted to pine forests. That is the understory shrub in most of our native pine forests on the west side of the country.
So it would do okay in Utah.
It's super native to Utah. I have one that volunteered in my side yard. It's growing in my side yard right now.
Nice. Good job, creeping Oregon grape.
Yeah, I don't know where you are though. So I depending on where you are, I might have a different answer for the native understory shrub. I guess I'll add the asterisk, research native understory shrubs to your area, because we're looking for the shade tolerance of a plant that is already adapted from an evolutionary standpoint to exist on the forest floor. That means that it's going to like the shadiness there.
That's a good one. Yes, I do. Okay.
Rachel's like, I do all this work for you and you're not even paying attention.
Make It Sweets wants to know if you have any advice on starting garden beds when you have an invasive ground cover.
Oh, tell me, like Bermuda grass? What kind of ground cover? I love that you keep asking me these questions and I'm just like, tell me more details. Let's just talk and be like, let's talk more about your specific situation. Okay, that's tough. I would do a couple of things. Of course, we want to sheet mulch the bottom of your garden beds heavily. So I would say multiple layers of cardboard, not just one. I might do like 5 or 6 just to prevent that ground cover from pushing up. But cardboard is eventually going to break down. There's going to be gaps. I would suggest actively removing, even if you have to dig down to rip up the roots, actively removing the invasive ground cover from the area where the raised beds will be placed so that we can get those roots up. And then I would do a trenched edge several inches away on the outside of the ground cover. I don't know how to describe this, but like a trenched edge is literally like, it's a trench. It's literally it's a trench. And you can buy a lawn trencher from Home Depot and it just looks like half of a pizza pie wheel, half of it's just a half circle on a stick. And you cut a trench, because what that does for most invasive ground covers that are spreading rhizomously, they're trying to push their roots this way across the top of the soil. The trench kind of makes those roots air prune themselves so they can't keep going. So clear it all out, trench an edge around each of your raised beds, heavily sheet mulch your beds, because it's going to prevent the rhizomus spreading like we see with Bermuda grass, for example. It's not going to prevent deep roots. My neighbors have Virginia creeper on their fence. Virginia creeper is not invasive the way that English ivy is, because it's technically native to the United States, but it's still highly aggressive. I am pulling Virginia creeper plants out of raised beds that are 25 feet away from the fence.
Wow.
So at some point you do just sort of have to manually manage that. I have to pull the Virginia creeper out with my hands because I can't, there's nothing I can do at that point, you know?
I want to give a heads up to folks on Instagram. I just got an alert from our streaming software that Instagram likes to throttle feeds after 1 hour. So
we're
if you see us disappear off of Instagram, please join us on YouTube.
Has it been an hour already?
We've been going on just about an hour.
I think we could wrap Instagram up, and if y'all are really into this, if you find this absolutely riveting, you could just join us on YouTube.
Just join us on YouTube. So we'll take one last question.
Or the Tickety Talks, Rachel says.
We have one last question from Instagram before the possibility of us disappearing from there. River Mizzle wants to know your favorite materials to build raised beds out of.
It's like I paid you.
Yeah.
It's like I paid you. I love to do cedar fence pickets. Okay, I'm going to tell you the self-serving answer first, and then I'm going to tell you a slightly more sustainable, less self-serving answer after that, okay? The self-serving answer is I love to do cedar fence pickets because they are significantly more inexpensive. They are significantly less expensive than if you were to buy untreated cedar in the same width. Make sure you're not getting pressure treated cedar. We want to do untreated, natural, rot-resistant cedar. It's a lot less money than if you were just trying to buy that from the lumber section. The reason I say this is self-serving is because I actually, on my website, yardfarmer.co, have digital plans that you can purchase for how to build raised beds up to 4x12, like large beds. We have 4x4 too. Don't worry. If you have a small one, it's fine. But yeah, we have digital plans on our website where you could look that up. You could build the beds. Now, I did promise a less self-serving, less capitalistic answer, so I will tell you, I have been really into like the willow weaves, like the weaving of,
so pretty.
You know what I mean? I've been really into these natural fences and things where you're able to just weave soft wood basically through it. Willow branches is a really common way to do it, but we don't have a ton of native willow in Utah. Something that I am doing around my greenhouse is creating little flower beds that I'm weaving from my dried out sunflower stalks.
Oh, cool.
So I've got, how many, you've been in my yard this past summer.
Yeah.
I had a witch forest of sunflowers, 100,000 sunflowers.
If Sleeping Beauty had been surrounded by sunflowers instead of brambles.
Yeah, there were parts of it that gave me anxiety. There were parts I just sacrificed to the sunflower gods and just said, like, I am not going into that space until the season is over because there's so many sunflowers.
They were taking that space whether you sacrificed it or not.
But I have a pile the size of me of dried out long sticks, basically, that are just those sunflower stalks that are now completely dried out. And so I'm going to weave them into a basically flower bed that wraps my entire greenhouse because it'll look so cottagecore. I'm really excited about that.
And it'll decompose.
So if you have access to willow branches or other branches that have a little bit of flexibility, or maybe this year you just want to grow 8,000 sunflowers like I did, then next year you'll have a free material to make raised beds out of. And I would just set posts, like sticks, basically. I would probably do 2x4s with rebar attached to it, get them in the ground, and then I would weave it.
You can Google wattle fencing.
That's what it is. I couldn't remember the name.
Thank you, Vesper Sky Homestead.
Thank you, Vesper. I like you. You're great.
Vesper Sky Homestead.
Yes.
Make It Sweets has a response. She was the one, I believe, or they were the one that had invasives, wanted to build a bed. They said they have Virginia creeper, English ivy, Chinese privet,
all of the things,
rhizome invasive.
All of the things.
So that advice stands for
that advice stands. I would strongly recommend you do all of the things I just said for the rhizomous creeping ground covers. Virginia creeper and English ivy are the ones that scare me the most. Like I said, I was ripping Virginia creeper out of beds 25 feet away from my neighbor's fence line. I would worry about the English ivy more because that's actually an invasive that is not supposed to be on American soil, whereas the Virginia creeper at least is like, native to here-ish. I would go about treating it. I would look up how to ecologically treat English ivy. If you have a restoration expert in your area, it might be good to bring them in just so that they can really do this in a responsible way. It's hard to get around herbicide with English ivy. The way that I find least irresponsible to do so, because we are not herbicide people in this house, is to actually do the cut stump method, where you're actually wounding the English ivy, chopping it off, and then applying literally with a paintbrush or a Q-tip, applying a very concentrated herbicide just to the wound, rather than doing foliar spray, which is of course causing huge ecosystem related repercussions. And we don't want to do that, especially if you are in a watershed and your runoff is ending up, which we all are. That's something we should all know, is that we're all in an interconnected watershed. So maybe just don't spray foliar stuff.
Want to let people know next week we do have our first ever webinar. And this webinar is pretty cool. We've been trying to get one of these off the ground for close to a year now.
Yeah, because you had to almost die.
Yeah, well, sometimes you gotta have a hobby.
Yeah.
So gotta have a hobby. So the webinar is going to be on I believe the 16th, and
the 13th.
13th.
Rachel shakes her head.
Yeah. Well, at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, and you do need to register for this course. But if you're looking at the screen right now, unless you're on TikTok, you will actually see a link to that. It is also perma-linked into the description of this video on YouTube.
Yeah.
But the easiest way to do it is, remember the web address, yardfarmer.co.
Yardfarmer.co.
Because if you go there, you will see it loud and proud. Actually, back up and it'll be in focus.
Oh, sorry. I forgot about the focus. I screwed up your focus.
No. Your focus is
perfect. It better? Is it back?
It's perfect. It's perfect. So please join us. It's going to be about 90 minutes long. The first hour is going to be informative, and the last 30 minutes will be a Q&A. Yep. And the best part is, if you missed the live webinar, you'll be able to register and watch it afterwards. So we'd love to see you there. We're very excited because, I don't know if you know this, Daryl's already been talking for over an hour. She is a font of information.
I could keep going, but I want to give you guys a break.
Oh, no, we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Do we need to sign off on Instagram though?
They're still going on Instagram. So we're going to say thank you for everybody who's sticking with us on Instagram. Okay. And if you have questions, of course, let us know, because this is your time and we want to be able to answer those questions. We have a couple from TikTok. We didn't catch the name. But the person wants to know about sourcing native plants in Southern California.
Oh, great question.
We've had a couple jobs down there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about the best. Like, the nursery off the top of my head is evading me, which is annoying because normally I just have my little library of information. Oh man. Okay. Can we find the username? Because I don't want to leave this person without the info. I have my list of.
It started with the C. It was really, it was really long.
All right. I feel terrible because I literally have an Excel spreadsheet with these sources. I just don't remember the exact name of the nursery right now. Yeah. Rachel says you should email Rachel. It's rachel@yardfarmer.co. Yeah. And Rachel, because if you email me, it's 1 out of 10 guarantee. If you email me, Rachel will still answer it because she keeps me in line. Because I'm a little bit scared of her.
But if they even tell me that they're from the TikToks and they wanted to know South Carolina nurseries.
Rachel says, tell her you're from the TikToks. And she will answer you.
That's awesome. Absolutely best answer ever.
If y'all didn't know already, since I've been talking to my friends off camera here, I've got Lee and Rachel here. Rachel is my operations manager. She joined us in January. She has changed my life because I was just this little struggling neurodivergent baby who could not function. And she came in and terrified me into being successful. And I love her for that. And then Lee is also joining us. Lee has been working with us since last April, right?
Yeah.
Lee George Cade of Geek Show fame. Infamy of Lee. Yeah. Of Geek Show infamy, media genius, radio host, podcaster extraordinaire. And he also happens to be Rachel's husband. So they're in love. Let them be in love, everybody.
It's kind of a family operation.
It is.
At YardFarmer.
Yeah.
Because
well, we're 5 people and 4 of the people do happen to be couples.
Yeah.
2 sets of couples.
Plus, I'm secretly in love with your husband, so it's all good.
Yes. So there's a polyamory at YardFarmer. You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
Anna Rokes on TikTok wants to know, how would you go around acidifying soil?
Great question. Are you in Utah? See, again, with the follow-up questions, I can't just not. This is a great question. It is an uphill battle if you live in Utah. My first recommendation is really to anything that's in the ground, anything that's over a large area, just please just grow native plants, because these plants really are adapted to our high level of alkalinity. I know that's not the answer you want, but it is the answer you need to hear.
Yeah.
And then for your vegetables, where I understand that we want to grow potatoes and that potatoes like acidic soil, we're doing that in raised beds or grow bags where we really can control the soil. We can control the soil's acidity level from the outset. And if we don't want to be constantly amending it because we want to preserve that soil structure, I would water those beds manually, and I would add citric acid to the water in order to bring the pH level of the water that you're using down. Because the water that I don't know if you like why we all have water softeners, because of the calcium, that's the alkalinity. That's all related. The mountains are made of limestone. Lime is what you use to make things more alkaline. That's just what we're dealing with here. So I would just neutralize the pH of the water if you were trying to grow potatoes or blueberries. Although if I ever have a client in Utah trying to grow a blueberry, I usually just say don't. I usually just say plant a serviceberry tree. It's the same texture of a blueberry, but it's native and you won't have to constantly fight the alkalinity of your own soil. It's really hard on a large scale, like on a planting bed scale. And this is for the folks who want hydrangeas. And they want that like big landscaped yard that looks like the East Coast. It's really hard to manage our alkalinity because our water is so alkaline. Our soil's naturally alkaline. Even if you were to acidify it once, the water is just going to bring that number right back up. So I would plant a native dogwood or viburnum instead that is more adapted.
Well, we get windstorms off the salt flats that just bring salt all over the valley. And
well, the salt is different.
Okay, it's not alkaline.
Like you could, it's saline, and we have that issue too with secondary water. A lot of my clients who use a secondary water source rather than culinary water are seeing huge salinity levels in their soil. Specifically, clients who are getting secondary water fed from the Weber River right now are seeing huge salinity uptakes, and then we're going to have to plant salt tolerant plants and maybe do some leaching or remediation in order to bring those salinity levels down. Wow. Salinity is not salinity actually sometimes is used to counteract the alkalinity. Like that's what a water softener is it's basically making your water really salty. So I would not use a water softener and then put the water on your garden, because you'd basically be salting the earth at that point. So don't do that.
And she is in Weber, so she is in Utah.
There you go.
And Sawdust Fairy, let me know the name of the person in SoCal so we can get them.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sawdust Fairy is always amazing.
And also like a ride or die commenter.
Yeah.
She also told several people to book a consult.
I love her. No, like we go way back on the TikTok.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We go way back.
Oh, yeah. Big commenter on every live that we've done.
Yes.
Kaylin Wells 01 on TikTok in Wyoming wants to plant sunflowers but needs a ground cover to choke out the grass. Happy that you're putting in a keystone species for one.
Yeah.
That's
look
fantastic.
Lee knows the keystone species. Yep. Yeah. You said Idaho?
Wyoming.
Perfect. Yeah. Sunflowers are great there. I guess the short answer I have for you is sunflowers will grow anywhere in Wyoming. You do not need to worry too much about the ground cover, to be honest. I would maybe just do a light sheet mulch of the ground cover and then put those sunflower seeds right on top of it. Sunflowers are what I recommend people grow if they literally cannot grow anything else. They will show up in the cracks of the concrete. They will show up in gravel. They'll grow just about anywhere.
You had a funny comment last year. You were like, you go onto the freeway on-ramps downtown during the summer. It's just covered in sunflowers.
Which I love. It's a keystone species. You see the birds over them all the time. Yep. My yard, like I said, I literally sacrificed a whole corner of it to sunflowers. I just said, that's the sunflower corner now. Birds were eating it until December. And then I think they finally picked everything clean. It was wonderful.
Yeah, we have... with our sunflowers, we get squirrels that come in from the neighborhood, and they just, we saw a very pregnant mama squirrel pulling sunflowers down and munching on them. It was the cutest thing.
And I'm really interested in the closed loop standpoint of how to use the sunflower remains, I guess, because you end up with this huge amount of biomass when you grow sunflowers, right? Just these huge towering things that all dry out and become a carbon source rather than a nitrogen source. So if you're not going to do what I'm going to do and make the wattle fencing, which is what I'm going to do around my greenhouse with my dried out sunflower sticks. If you're not going to do that, I would throw them right into a wood chipper. Yeah. And then use that as your vegetable bed mulch for the following year.
Forget those
so
logs.
Just continue to grow your own garden mulch as a closed loop system. Sunflower seeds are going to reseed themselves. Because if you don't know this, you should know this. Once you plant sunflowers, you will never not have sunflowers again. You will have sunflowers. You will never need to buy another sunflower seed in your life. And every spring, you're going to have to perform this great reckoning where you decide what sunflowers get to stay and what sunflowers must go because they're growing up directly in your pathway. So I would say just plant the sunflowers once, and then every single year, utilize the carbon as either a garden mulch or make cool fences out of them, like I'm going to do this year.
And you're going to see so much of your local wildlife just going
free
ham.
stuff.
Yeah. A little vocation advice from Maddie Kraft on YouTube. Maddie's graduating with a major in sustainable design in May.
Oh, so cool.
Wants to know if you're self-employed. They're trying to figure out their situation, really loves everything that you're about.
Amazing. I'd be very interested to know what the sustainable design program is. Our landscape architect, Kyra, got a master's in sustainable design from a university in Edinburgh, actually.
Yeah.
So as far as what you're studying, that's a great field to study. We hired somebody who studied that. To answer your question about how our business works, yes, I am. Do I still count as self-employed if I'm employing others? I'm self-employed, and they are employed by me. We're a team of 5, and we grew very quickly because the demand is absolutely there for sustainable design. So I believe you will be 100%, empowered and ready to take the world by storm because the demand is there. I would say getting your first couple of clients so that you can have proof of concept is probably the first way to go. My first client was my hairdresser. We were talking about it while she was cutting my hair, and I said, let me do it. And I did it, and I posted about it online, and then a bunch of you showed up in my inbox, and here we are a year later or 2 years later.
And no signs of slowing down.
It was almost 3 years later for that project, but really a year since like quitting my job and really taking this full speed, a year and a couple months. I didn't just plant that landscape a year ago is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I would say get your first couple of clients. I am, like I mentioned at the beginning of this live, actually trying to facilitate that where there are folks like you who have degrees in sustainable design or future degrees in sustainable design who want to do this with people who have really good causes that they need designs for, but don't necessarily have funding. So rather than you doing something for your hairdresser or for some homeowner that just wants free labor, you could help a nonprofit build a community garden, or you could help indigenous community do, there are these opportunities. So I'm trying to facilitate that. And I have a form that Rachel will remind me to put somewhere more permanent than an Instagram story, which was the last place I put it, so that you can sign up. And then when those opportunities arise, I will send out emails to say, this community garden is looking for a designer. They have no funding. If anybody wants to take it on pro bono, they'd be doing this community a huge service, and they'd also get valuable portfolio work to then display to their future clients.
And don't be afraid of your social media accounts.
Yeah. I don't know if that's good advice to just say, like, try being vaguely funny on the internet, and then that might help.
Okay, I'm gonna try and pronounce.
Try being vaguely funny on the internet. You might get some clients because that's all I really have going for me.
Afe Atlas on Instagram says they live in Austin, Texas.
Very cool.
And they just let their grass die every summer during the drought. What would
Went
be
dormant? Didn't die, my friend. It did not die.
They want to know if there's a better alternative to doing that.
Get buffalo grass.
I was waiting for buffalo grass to come up. We made it almost 80 minutes without buffalo grass coming up. So
that is impressive.
Yeah, it is.
So you have a cool season grass. You live in Austin, Texas. It's not a particularly cool place. You should have a warm season grass. That way it's only dormant in the cold months. You said something very telling, and you heard me kind of whisper and mutter. I'm like, it's not dead. It's not dead. Yeah. You said you let your grass die every single summer. It's not dead. It's dormant because it's a cool season grass. Bluegrass, a lot of like tall fescue. There are a couple others that are popular depending on where you live regionally, but Kentucky bluegrass being the most pervasive. It wants to be alive in a rainy, cool season. It wants to go dormant during a hot, dry season, and then it wakes up again as the rain picks up. We as a society overwater our lawns in order to trick our bluegrass into thinking it is always the rainy, cool season, and that is the only way to keep a cool season grass alive in the summer. So you are just really giving this plant something that does not align with the nature and the climate in which you live. There are places where you can have cool season grass alive all summer. We're talking like Minnesota and places where cool season grass is absolutely the right choice. Austin, Texas is not that place. Rip up your bluegrass. You can get seeds now. It used to be that you could only install buffalo grass through plugs, but there is a variety called Sun Dancer buffalo grass that you can purchase by seed. And I just left a client's house this last week where, let's see, so all of 2023, fall of 2022, they overseeded, or not overseeded, they just fully seeded dirt, their blank new build property with Sun Dancer buffalo grass. It is fully filled in and it is magnificent. So really one full season is all we're talking about for installing it and getting it to really pop off. Right now, I need, for Utah people or for people where it gets a little cold, I need you to understand it looks brown and thatchy, and it looks like a Kentucky bluegrass lawn looks when you're not watering it right now. And then April's going to roll around. It's going to burst into this bright green, beautiful color. It's very soft. It's absolutely gorgeous. Zero water, and you don't have to mow it because it maxes out at 3 inches tall.
And if I remember right, it's native to a huge chunk of the United States.
The Great Plains region from Montana to Mexico, Austin, Texas is right in there.
Yeah.
It does not like standing water or super sandy soil. So if you have a little bit of clay, which I think Austin is more clay than sand, once you get into Houston and stuff, it gets sandier. I think you're in the perfect place for it. I would just get Sun Dancer buffalo grass, solarize or sod cut your sod, remove it completely, overseed with buffalo grass. You're going to be golden.
Dana Clark on YouTube wants to know if you have any advice for getting started with a compost bin system.
Yeah, 3 bins. Oh, okay. Well, again, I want to ask more follow-up questions.
Where are you at?
Where are you at? No, I want to know if you're in a really rural place or if you're in an urban place. Since I live in an urban place, I'm just going to tell you my way. I have in the very, very back corner of my yard where I'm not worried about like if some, non-human beings investigate it every once in a while. I have in the very, very back corner, I have a 3-bin system I built out of pallets, but I don't want to go on a hike in the very, very back corner just to drop my kitchen scraps off every day. So right out my back door, I have a regular like Home Depot compost tumbler, like the kind you just get at Costco or whatever, the plastic kind. I just have one. And the reason I have that close to my house is because most of those vermins and creepy crawly things that we might be nervous about right up against our house in an urban environment are agoraphobic, and they're not going to climb up into the compost. They want to be down low on the ground. So that just keeps it a little less freaky for me to go drop off my coffee grounds, my banana peels every day. Then that fills up pretty quickly because they're not very large, right? It's not actually a meaningful amount of compost if you want to really be using it as a soil replacement, like a bagged soil replacement. So then it fills up and I wheelbarrow it to my back corner. You place it in one bin until that one fills up. Then you keep moving it and rotating it. And then usually you'll have one bin ready to go, one bin that's kind of breaking down, and the third bin that you're filling up. That's the best way.
Yeah, Denny says she's in the rural Pacific Northwest in Washington.
Then you can just do the 3-bin. And being in Washington, things compost so easy. Yeah. Just do the 3-bin system. You really just fill up them one at a time. The reason you want to have 3 bins is that you can't be actively throwing stuff into the compost and also harvesting from it at the same time because it hasn't broken down yet. Yeah. So the idea being you have one bin that you're still filling up with your scraps, one bin that's actively cooking and breaking down after you've finished filling it up, and then one that's ready to go. The compost is fully broken down.
Well, folks, we're starting to run out of time. We got about 6 minutes left before we end the feed, but fear not. If we don't get your question tonight, we're going to hold on to them because we're doing another one Friday.
Oh, yeah.
At 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Yeah. And we'd love for all of you to join us because it's a great time to get started on your garden and landscape projects. And again, just a little bit of housekeeping here. If you are joining us on Instagram or on TikTok, this feed will exist forever on our YouTube channel, and we will be breaking it down into some nice by topic videos so that it'll be easy to find it. Also, I learned how to put the scrub feature on so people can find.
So you can speed up.
So you can
Very
speed
good.
up and check
Lee, I need you
everything
to take your microphone, put it close to your mouth like this, I need you to tell them what to do. Tell them to subscribe to YouTube because
Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Do it for Lee.
Do it for me. But also,
This man was in
helps
a
us,
coma. Subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Daryl doesn't talk about this a lot, but Daryl has a passion for educating people about this. And we kind of look at our YouTube channel as our education platform for a lot of this stuff. So, and then of course, another little bit of housekeeping. Next week, we have our first ever webinar. And
come to my webinar. Yeah, Lee put the link on the screen. I'm going to talk about sustainable gardening, closed loops, making it so you don't have to spend as much money. I don't want you to have to buy soil in bags. I don't want you to have to buy fertilizer from somebody else. I don't want you to have to overwater your garden. I don't want you to have to till your soil. So we're going to mimic nature and replicate the patterns of nature so that your ecosystems can manage themselves and you don't have to have squash bugs that terrify you like I did that one time.
Pointed at you.
I hate squash bugs so much. Yeah, you're like, I just don't need squash anymore. But you can grow squash resistant varieties. And so we can talk about really just making smart, did I say squash resistant?
Yeah,
Squash bug resistant varieties of squash.
Like tromboncino.
Like tromboncino. Lee is listening. So that we just work smarter, not harder. Why are we making it hard for ourselves?
And of course,
why are we doing that?
If you do want to join the webinar, you do have to register. So if you are not on YouTube and you can't see the link, just head over to yardfarmer.co and we'll have a link for you there. And we hope to see you all on the 13th at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
It's going to be a 90-minute course, 60 minutes of education and fun, 30 minutes of questions and answers. But if you can't make it to the actual live webinar, you'll still be able to register to watch the recording afterwards. The only thing you miss out on is the questions and answers. So,
yeah.
And even then, 9 times out of 10, if you shoot us an email, we'll answer.
Rachel will answer.
Rachel will answer.
Rachel will answer.
Yeah, we want to take care of you folks because, you've been really super good to us. Tiffany Hunter and on YouTube.
We still taking questions?
We're still taking questions.
You really scraped by there to me.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Living in Florida, sandy soil. If they can't get to do buffalo grass, what would they suggest for a soft grass, if any?
Oh, good question. Soft grass, if any. I don't think frog fruit is as soft as like a bluegrass lawn. Frog fruit is absolutely my go-to for any Florida yard. It is an amazing native ground cover. Sandy soil is really tough. What I would probably suggest for somebody who really needed a soft surface is to do like a zoysia or like a warm season grass in a very small manageable area. I would not do that carpet fence to fence around every corner grass. It's just not sustainable. I would pick a 20 by 10 area, like just enough to throw a softball around or to, sit and have your picnic, and maybe do a zoysia. And then the rest I would do frog fruit as a native ground cover.
This frog fruit sounds cool.
It's so cool. You need to add so many wood chips to your soil because we need to really increase that sponge-like ability, because otherwise that water is just moving straight down through your super sandy soil into the water table in Florida. So in Utah, I'd be like, be very careful with wood chips. They're never going to break down. In Florida, I'm like, get all the wood chips you possibly could ever find, and you will not be enough. So it really depends where you live.
Just build a mountain out of wood chips.
Literally, you could go and get 8 chip drops full of wood chips, spread them so that they're 6 inches thick on top of your yard, and then add a layer of topsoil and put your frog fruit right on top. Those wood chips are broken down in one season in Florida. And it's just providing this like sponge-like quality where that moisture is actually going to hang around and help your plants establish. Whereas the sand just, it's gone. It's gone.
That's amazing.
Really depends on where you live.
Okay, we have one last comment. It's not actually a question.
Oh.
And I love this. It's Little Big Honeymoon on Instagram.
Hi.
Doesn't actually have a question.
Oh.
But has a consult later this week and is super excited. Their
Yay.
husband has been teasing them about how excited they are about this consult. So I'm excited about their consult because your consults are really cool.
I'm excited too. And it's almost like I paid you to say that. If anybody's listening who hasn't booked a consult yet, you can go over to the website, YardFarmer.co, and you can book that. And we really spend an hour, sometimes plus, because I got mad ADHD and I'm real excitable.
Yeah.
So my consult today was an hour and 40 minutes, and I was not taking a hint that it was time to wrap up until she said, I have to go. But regardless, we take about an hour to really dig into your specific yard's problems, go through layout planning if you need that, talk about rainwater harvesting if you need that, figure out what native plants you need if you need that, and really just give you custom specific answers that are just much more tailored to you than this chaotic live has been.
Yeah.
You know. So thank you. I'm really excited to meet you. I'm excited to talk with you very, very soon. It's my favorite thing about life, if you haven't guessed that I'm kind of into this stuff a little bit.
It's pretty exciting stuff. I anytime anybody books a consult, or I find out somebody that I know booked a consult, I'm just like, oh, you're going to have such an amazing time.
You've got quite the network. A lot of people name drop you.
Yeah. I'm kind of.
He's a popular gay.
Yeah. In certain circles.
He's a famous gay.
In certain circles. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Again, we'll be back Friday night for another live stream. It'll be 6 p.m. Mountain Time next week. Of course, don't forget about the webinar. I think we might even have another live stream next week because
we're crazy.
Well, and you're going to be out for part of March, so we want to make sure that we get as much information out during February as possible. Again, if your question wasn't answered tonight, we'll try to actually start the stream on Friday with that. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. And of course,
everybody, like and subscribe on YouTube right now.
If you're on TikTok or Instagram, of course, if you missed anything, it will live forever on YouTube.
It'll be on YouTube.
So do you have anything
subscribe on YouTube
to close out with there, Daryl?
I'm just really grateful to be here in the room with Rachel and Lee. Like, I don't want to get real sappy before we go, but it just means so much to me that we get to be back here together. We've had some health issues and things, and I'm just really happy that we're all here. And I really feel like things are coming together with the right people at the right time, really making something special and magical. So thanks everybody for watching me hang out with Rachel and Lee, just having the best time of my life. Were you going to say something, Lee?
Oh, I just remembered we have a project that we started chronicling last year on the YouTube channel, our friend Marcy. And I just realized what it's going to look like this summer.
Going to be stunning. And I think about Chelsea's project. I think about all of these projects that went in last year where we're getting to see these mature landscapes just completely take off.
That's yet another plug for the YouTube channel, because we do chronicle some of the local projects, actually some of the national projects we've done too. But again, folks, make sure to like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you Friday night. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, bye everybody. Da, 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 da.